right, this is Sports for Real with Coach Hall. Been a few days, been a turbulent whirlwind few days. Let me get my record button going. Oh, okay, this is Coach Hall. Been away for a few days. A lot of things been taking place. As you saw last week, the Chiefs completed their repeat championship by knocking off the 49ers in overtime. 49ers pretty much controlled the game most of the day, but they kicking field goals instead of trying to score touchdowns. They had a couple times they could have just went for it on fourth down and put themselves in a better position to win that game. They did go for it one time that I recall, but a couple times they should have gone for it. They did not. And in the end, things bit them. But sometimes it's just not meant to be. You know, that was that a punt, hit the guy leg, and dude instead of falling on it, he tries to pick it up, and the Chiefs end up falling on that. They get that block kick, that extra point, which really changed the game. And from there, everything just seemed to continually slide towards the Chiefs' favor. But that's to be expected in a championship game. And the Chiefs, they're the kind of team that you got to knock out. You can't keep giving them opportunity after opportunity. Otherwise, it's going to bite you in the end. And you saw what happened to the 49ers. So, as always, when teams win championships, they get up there and they start talking trash. Here the Chiefs talking about doing a three-peat now after they just knew they were going to win the championship. You know, don't bet against the Chiefs and we're never an underdog. And, they talking all kind of trash. But you see that every year when teams win a championship. But the three-peat thing, I think when you go to talking about a three-peat, you curse yourself. I've seen it, New England, they didn't say much. But I remember San Francisco doing a whole lot of talking when they won the championship that second time. And the next year, they got beat by the Giants. They were right there in the championship game, and they probably should have beat the Giants. But in years past, when things go your way and you're able to win a championship, you don't always get those same kind of breaks. And as you saw, Kansas City got break after break after break. They took advantage of it, but you can't assume that you knew you were going to win that game just because you're the Chiefs. But that's fine. But San Francisco, since that game ended, they've been the talk of the league. First of all, they come out and they start talking down on the situations where they could have made a difference, the things that could have gone different, the calls that were made. In essence, they were pretty much calling out their head coach for not being prepared, especially when it came to overtime. They said that was never discussed in training camp. Well, last I checked, if you're part of a profession and you're a prominent part of that profession, it seems to me that those people are all well versed in their craft, everything about it. So if a game goes into overtime, you would think that they should know the rules, right? Same kind of thing with Donovan McNabb when he's the catalyst for why the rules changed in the first place. He gets up there and says that he didn't know the rules were the way they were in overtime. And he used that as an excuse as to why they lost. I never bought that. Just like I'm not buying it when they trying to put the blame on the coach for not going over the rules. Maybe he didn't go over the rules. They say Kansas City did. Most of the other teams did. But it's the kind of thing you don't really worry about or should have to tell you much about because you guys are professional and you're supposed to know what the rules of the game are. So you're going to blame that on the coach. They blame poor play calling on the coach. We're talking about the head coach, Shanahan. And that's easy to do because if you look back at Shanahan's record, he has a history of blowing leads. Last time they were in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, they had a 10-point lead. They couldn't hold that. They gave up a whole bunch of points in the fourth quarter. Then, before that, he was at the Falcons. They had that 23 lead in the Super Bowl against New England. No, he wasn't the head coach, but he was the offensive coordinator. And one similarity that connects these two games, when they had these leads, he refused to run the football. Football, yes, is wide open now. Everybody's throwing the ball everywhere. But if you can't run the football, I don't care what level you're on. If you refuse to run the football, eventually that passing game is not going to work. Somebody's going to get a holding call. Something's going to happen to kill your drive. You got to run the football to get that clock running to shorten the game. keep the other guy on the sideline because we know he can beat you. Shanahan seems not want to learn his lessons. So in essence, he should shoulder some blame for that. But the players themselves, they must shoulder a lot of blame. Now, coming back to the 49ers in a minute. On Wednesday, the Chiefs held their championship parade. And at the end of the parade there, they had a shooting. One person was killed, a radio personality, and more than 10 kids were injured during the situation. Now, hopefully they weren't shot. They probably were trampled or had some falls or something that threw them off. But it's a tragic situation when you have a celebration and it turns into a tragedy. 9 times out of 10, that shooting probably had nothing to do with the parade. Oftentimes, you have people that are warring or competing against each other, and they run into each other in a public space, and it's own way of I see you. That's generally what that's about. It's not somebody coming up to shoot up the parade. It just so happened you're in conflict with somebody, and that's where it went down. And unfortunately, a young lady lost her life, and a whole bunch of kids are traumatized because of that situation. So what to do? Are you going to do it virtually from now on? Are you going to restrict certain people from coming to these events? What can you do? If you do that, they're really going to come out and shoot. So it's one of those things where you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So now this makes the city of Kansas City look bad because this is the first time I ever heard anything like that. Not saying that things haven't happened before in other cities when they celebrate. It just so happens that this is a large stage when everybody just happens to be paying attention to it. So hopefully this kind of thing doesn't happen again. But if you look around this country, it's kind of hard to go out in public because when you go out in public, these things tend to happen and it can happen at any time. So you can't live your life in fear, but at the same time, you have to be very cautious. And if you want to be completely cautious, then you got to limit your outside exposure as much as possible. But then what kind of life is that? So it's a toss of a coin, however you want to pull it. So hopefully everything works out with those children out there and we won't see this kind of thing again. But it was a sad situation that occurred on Wednesday after the parade pretty much was over. Now, yesterday, it came out that the 49ers have fired their defensive coordinator. What's his name? Steve Wilkes. Now, Wilkes had it rough. Rough in being that they don't seem to let him keep his job long. Wilkes did a hell of a job this year. San Francisco defense were averaging, they might have given up 16, 17 points a game. Mahomes only scored 19 in regulation. So as a scapegoat type move, Shanahan has decided to fire Wilkes. Now, the last time they lost the Super Bowl, they gave up like 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. They didn't fire their defensive coordinator. He got promoted up to the job with the Jets. He was celebrated. And if he didn't get a job, he probably could have came back. He just got Wilkes. And because the offense didn't do what they needed to do, because the head coach didn't have the right organization he should have had, they got to blame it on somebody, right? So they point the finger at Wilkes. So Wilkes is a short time in Arizona as an interim. Now he's a one-year person over here with the 49ers defense. I think Wilkes is going to be all right, even if he has to come back to the HBCUs. But that's fine, too. But going back to what I was saying earlier about the 49ers in their locker room, do you realize that the defensive players know that they aren't really responsible for losing that game? And now you're going to fire the defensive coordinator who they probably have a good rapport with and know that he did a pretty damn good job. So if they were complaining before, what are they saying now that Wilkes is gone? Shanahan is on the clock in San Francisco. He's got a pretty good defense. He's going to bring somebody in. And if they win next year, then this guy's going to get all the credit. And you're not going to give Wilkes any. Furthermore, you're basically saying that the man was an outsider. You took a chance on the outsider. Well, what do you mean by outsider, Shanahan? Are you going to do something with your offensive staff? Who's calling your offensive plays? Why didn't you run the football more? Why didn't you go for it on fourth down? Why? But it's Wilkes' fault. The man held Mahomes to 19 points in regulation. Why is it Wilkes' fault? Shanahan if he wasn't in danger of losing the locker room before, he's really in danger of losing it now. But the problem is everybody's crying. Bosa, they talking about some of the decisions that the coaches didn't make. They talk about these overtime rules that they should have known about, that weren't told about. They pointed fingers, so they can't say much if Shanahan is pointing fingers at Wilkes and they got rid of the defensive coordinator. So is he now going to start talking about, Bosa, is he now going to start talking about the offensive side of the football? It's time for these cats to grow up, accept responsibility that you lost, no matter how you lost, and move forward. Same thing I said about Mahomes when they lost in the regular season to Buffalo, and him, Mahomes, and Reed up there hollering about the official. As many calls they get from the official, he had the nerve to fix his mouth to say that the referees weren't making the right calls. Come on, man. Give us all a break, man. We don't want to hear that shit. Go play the game and let the chips fall where they may. Same thing with San Francisco. Let the chips fall where they may. It didn't happen for you this time. Suck it up. Go back to work and come back next year. But at the same time, Wilkes should have another chance to come back and complete the job they didn't quite finish this year. So who are they going to get as the defense coordinator? I don't know. Everybody's pretty much been hired. And the Jaguars had a defensive coordinator. They had the same situation, kind of like with Wilkes, but they fired their defensive coordinator in a scapegoat situation. And what's the name? Mike Zimmer, I think he just took a job with the Cowboys, I believe it is. So it's not very many defensive coordinators out there. So who would the 49ers turn to? A staffer? You wait so late to make a decision. Now, granted, you playing in the Super Bowl, but still, it's late. Who are you going to turn to? Again, Steve Wilkes, he's going to land standing up, and it won't be long before he lands. So we're not worried about that. But the fact that they cut him loose, that's just don't make sense. And what I want to see, and what we should see, you want to hear a word from Wilkes. You get fired, hey, you don't want me? Fine, I pack it up and move somewhere else. But don't start crying like Joey Bosa and the way Mahomes were doing early in the year, because it is unbecoming of a professional athlete to start crying after he loses. Because in the end, everybody won anyway. The ultimate goal is to feed your family, and these guys are making more than enough to feed their families. Yes, we want to win. Yes, I'm going to go out and do all I can to win. But if it didn't win, hey, I lost. And I'll be back next time. But that's the lay of the land right now in sports, period. Everybody's pointing their finger at everybody else, and it's just not working out the way that they want, and they're going to make a big stink about it, and they just want somebody to hear them cry on their shoulders. So until I get some more information, I keep you posted. This has been Sports for Real. We out.